A controversy is raging in most parts of the world about the future of our forests. A diverse range of interest groups are concerned about the decisions being made which will affect not only our natural heritage of the living forest, but industries and livelihoods based on our society's use of wood. The beginnings of the logging process.
Having defined the areas which can't be logged, the balance of the area is then available for logging, and within this area we draw up 3-year logging plans. These plans are then approved, and then for the current year's logging we define coops, which are a small area, usually less than 100 hectares, which will be logged in the current year. We have a logging control sheet which is given to our forest supervisors, or prepared by our forest supervisors in fact, and is given to the log licensee who will be taking the logs from these areas. This logging control sheet sets out the volume of timber that we hope to obtain from that area, the fact that there are certain areas which are not available for logging because of streamside constraints or constraints of rock or steepness, or being reserved for flora or fauna, and any other factors which are relevant to the logging on that coop. A map is also produced which defines the boundaries of that coop, blue representing a boundary, yellow representing a boundary and also being a buffer strip, which means it's a reserve along a creek. And in this particular case we can see a road shown in red and a landing shown as a red cross. Now these same colours are used in the field, and our forest overseer, our supervisor, goes out the bush and actually uses coloured tapes or paint on trees to define the boundaries of this coop using the same colour scheme that is on this map. Forest supervisor then starts the contractor logging in that coop, and the job of the forest supervisor or the forest overseer is to ensure that the maximum volume of timber is taken out of every tree that is felled on that coop, to ensure that the seed trees are left if seeding is to be the method of regeneration of that coop, and to ensure that all the environmental restraints are adhered to by the logging contractor, such as keeping away from buffer strips in creeks, making sure that at the completion of logging the snig tracks have got to be barred, which means putting a bar of dirt across them so that they won't be subject to erosion later on. At the completion of logging of this logging coop, the forest overseer then inspects the whole area, and when he is happy that the area has been satisfactorily logged and rehabilitated, he then issues a coop clearance certificate to the logging contractor, which then enables him to leave the area and proceed to the next area to be logged.
I moved down the Cann River from Sydney over 20 years ago now. My uncle started this sawmill in the early 1950s, and I decided at a fairly early age this is the sort of life that I'd like to, and shifted down here to Cann River and became involved in the sawmill, and my current involvement is running this particular sawmill, and also fairly recently I've taken an active interest in all our industries matters. I'm a Vice President of the Victorian Sawmills Association. I'm also the Chairman of the East Gippsland Sawmillers Group.
I grew up in Cann River because my family's I'm a fourth generation person in Cann River. My great-grandfather was the first white settler across the Snowy River, and my grandfather, both sides, maternal and paternal, were members of the Shire Council for many years, and so this is my home, my family's home.
I think our major problem at the moment is one of tenure. At the moment we can probably only see about 3 years ahead as to our resource and the access to that resource. This is creating a lot of problems as far as capital investment's concerned. There's not enough confidence in the industry to invest the sort of capital that's necessary to keep the industry fairly active and vital. It's going to affect employment and the whole economy of the area fairly dramatically unless we can continue to have a viable hardwood timber industry or forest products industry in East Gippsland. Currently there are 6,000 people living in East Gippsland and 2,500 of them in the workforce. And of those 2,500, there are 1,100 who are directly employed in the timber industry or the forest products industry. And coupled with that, we use a multiplying factor of those who are engaged in service type activities like tyres and fuel and even the pub for that matter. They just wouldn't be viable unless the forest products industry continues as it is today. The visual effects on the environment subsequent to a logging operation probably could be deemed to be fairly horrific, but it's only visual. It's only a very short period of time that we've got the regeneration process starts and everything comes back. It's one of the criteria of the Forest Commission that an area won't be logged unless it can be successfully regenerated.
Why am I concerned for East Gippsland is, having lived here all my life, I can see the changes in the environment, in the forests. Some of them are subtle, some of them are more dramatic, so they make you very aware of them. I'm also very concerned for the future of our small community, which does depend on timber to a certain extent. The other thing I'm greatly concerned about is the danger to our environment. The ecology of the area, plus the destruction to flora and fauna, which so little is known about. Forestry Commission have said in their own figures that the saw log industry will have to be halved from 370,000 to 200,000 by the year 2000. So by their own figures, there is going to be a shortfall. So that's going to affect our community. There's going to be loss of jobs, decline in the number of people in our community. Eucalypt forest is designed to burn. It's been like that since time began. But when you have an area of forest which is all one size and one age, if it is burnt hot, it burns those little saplings off, you have the whole ground exposed again, you have the whole thing repeated again. All the environment's lost again. And there's no way they can keep fires out of different areas of the forest. That's been proven in 1983. So that's the interruption to the environment by the logging process. It's a massive interruption to not only the immediate environment but the long-term environment.
We burn the coop following logging with what we call a high-intensity burn. This is usually done in March or April under conditions which we pick according to weather and according to rainfall. After that, we then may be relying on seed trees. We may have left seed trees on the area, and regeneration follows from those seed trees. The seed is dropped onto the ground, onto the ash bed created by the burn. In other species or in other situations, we actually collect seed, and then following the burn, we distribute that seed on the ground either by hand or from an aircraft. And the other alternative, in some species, we actually plant seedlings on the area following the burn. Following the regeneration process, the seeding or planting, 12 to 18 months later, we do what we call a regeneration survey, which is a survey to establish that the regeneration process has been satisfactory. If it hasn't been, we then do some follow-up work, replanting or reseeding to ensure that the area is fully regenerated.
The first reason we oppose a wood chipping industry is that hardwoods, which we have in East Gippsland, are a very, very valuable resource in the world today. The world's been denuded of hardwood timbers. So that we've got to make maximum use of our valuable resource. And it's got to be maximum use first and foremost for Victorians and Australians. If we manage our forests in a different way, we will not create the need for a wood chip industry. The form of logging process that's used in East Gippsland, and in fact all over Victoria, creates a residue which they say should be then chipped. And finally, we oppose a wood chip industry because it would be a massive destruction to our environment. It's a very avaricious timber industry. The conservation movement, one of its main objectives is a restructuring of the timber industry. The sawlog industry needs to be revised so that the process is making better utilisation of our scarce resource. So if an area is going to be logged, then that area should be logged to the maximum benefit with the least possible destruction to the environment. Now you can do this by encouraging other industries other than just a straight sawlog industry. There's an operation in a little mill operating in this area now who goes into a logging coop after the larger mills have taken out their sawlog, and they make use of timber that has been left behind, either the optional trees or any of the butts or heads that have been left behind by the sawlog industry. Now, if a smaller mill can go into an area and make an adequate living out of what those larger mills have left behind, it shows a massive amount of poor organisation in the use of our forests.
The extraction of this material, the residues from our sawlog operations, then we could fully utilise it. At the moment, all we're doing is fully utilising that material, which can be economically processed in a hardwood sawmill. We do our very best in the hardwood sawmill to utilise as much of it as we can. We're currently working on about a 40% recovery from the volume of sawlogs that we bring in, and that's converted into sawn timber right from fairly high-grade hardwood scantling timbers for house frames and that, right down to fence palings and pallet material, tiling battens. We cut out the sawlog as far as we possibly can. One of the greatest objections, I believe, that our opponents have to wood chipping is the fact that we'll be clear felling. They don't understand that we're already clear felling and have been clear felling for many years. The Forest Commission have found that they have to clear fell an area to get successful regeneration, to get the light onto the forest floor, and as a result of this clear falling, we're probably only extracting about 1/3 or maybe even only 1/4 of the material that we utilise on site, or the material that we process in a logging coop. The balance of that's just left on the forest floor. There is a ready market for that, and it's an increasing market with photocopiers and computer paper and that sort of thing. The wealth potential and employment potential from the utilisation of that material is fairly dramatic, really. It's been estimated that some 350 jobs could be created in that industry, and also we look at what it would mean not just to the industry but to those industries that are servicing the forest products industry.
Sydney is famous for the Blue Mountains. People go up into the Blue Mountains to observe the forest, to observe the uniqueness of it. An Australian forest is unique, and much of East Gippsland is unique. Now let's encourage the same sort of development in the Orbost Shire and generate a tourist industry alongside these other industries. Not concentrate just on a timber industry that is becoming destructive and is eventually going to block out the other industries. So the future of the Orbost Shire depends on a multi-purpose use of the forest.
We get a fairly substantial influx of tourists during the tourist season, but without that infrastructure that exists to service our industry for the other 9 or 10 months of the year, the tourist industry just couldn't be sustained. Coupled with that, of course, is if we're looking at some reduction in employment and retrenchments, redundancies, etc., I can't see those current sawmill or forest employees. I'll give you an example. I've got guys here, I just can't see them making milkshakes or motel beds.
We must sit down now and come to terms with the future of East Gippsland and make concessions and work out what is going to be the long-term plan for all people in East Gippsland.
I just look at it this way, that we need wheat for bread, so we've got wheat fields and they get harvested. We need meat and milk, so we clear land and farm animals and just provide the milk and meat. We also need a commodity called timber.
Separately, there is a timber industry inquiry, which was initiated by the Minister for Conservation, Forests and Lands. The findings are due to be published in April or May. There is also a further study taking place by the Land Conservation Council into the East Gippsland area. These studies will indicate to the public what resources are available to the industry and the community in the future.